Yes, vulgar gestures are
They're my
not.
specialty.
Welcome everyone to the Unready room. Double header episode tonight. Playing catch up. Doing a couple episodes of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. We've got a lot to talk about
So
because
much.
we picked definitely a couple of interesting episodes to do a double show on. Oh man. But
Tissue ready.
I'll be fine.
I have a whole box right here.
I'm Dan Gunther. With me, of course, Brandi Jackola. Brandi, great to see you. Really
Great
excited
to
to
see
talk
you.
about these two episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's actually kind of fortuitous that you weren't able to do last week anyway because I had COVID. So,
Yay.
yeah,
Man.
I still would have done it. I still would have pushed through just because
Yeah.
but yeah. Hey, folks, keep in mind, COVID doesn't affect everybody in the exact same way. So just because you had a mild case doesn't mean that everybody does. And what I got
Mm-hmm.
was not a mild case.
Oh man.
So yeah, in fact, the brain fog still happening, still happening. So if I
Well,
just suddenly do something really dumb, that's why.
I'm glad you're sounding a lot better.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Bruce also recently down with a bout of COVID. So,
It's
man,
no
it's
joke.
yeah, it's not gone, folks. It's still
No.
around and it's still bad. So,
And it's
yeah.
getting worse because there are new variants of Omicron that are even more infectious and dangerous. And yeah, I'm double vaccinated, had my booster, still got it, still got a
Hmm.
bad case.
Yeah.
So there is no guarantee of anything. Please just wear a freaking mask.
Yeah. And also, if you haven't already, get vaccinated, get boosted. Brandi, if you hadn't have been vaccinated, who knows, right? So,
Could have died. Could
yeah.
have died.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, John, I'm sorry to hear that. Folks in the comments also chiming in that they're getting COVID, and I'm so sorry. I've somehow either been really lucky and avoided it, or managed to be one of the people that had symptomless and just passed it on to a whole bunch of other people unknowing. I hope that's not the case, obviously, but I've always been very careful when I'm inside wearing a mask, like in public places, indoors and stuff.
Yeah,
So
same.
I've been very careful, but I mean nothing's 100%, obviously, and yeah, it's very dangerous for a lot of people for sure. So, whew. But I'm glad you're doing better, Brandi. So happy you're here.
Thank you. And I have to point out that I believe that the progression of contact was first at my husband's work, where there is no mask mandate. However, he's been
Hmm.
wearing a mask for over 2 years at work. But there was someone nearby who was coughing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got sick. And of course, before he realized what was going on, before I realized what was going on, he passed it on to me. And so there we are.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very familiar story I've been hearing. So,
Mhm.
oh boy. Well, let's move on to I was gonna say let's move on to happier topics and talk about these two episodes, but we got a pair of pretty heavy episodes here, with some at least in this first one, some happy fun moments in it that are gonna lift things a bit. But
More than some, more than
yeah,
some.
yeah,
There was a lot of laughter for me during most of the episode, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and there's a particular standout character, I think, in this episode that
Mhm,
we're obviously going to talk a lot more about in the next episode as well, but he has
mhm.
some time to shine in this episode. So, yeah, okay, well, let's get into it. The Elysian Kingdom, cast your minds back to not just this past week, but the week before. We've got an episode in which we start out with Mabenga and his daughter, and he's continuing to work on a cure. And according to his medical officer's log, she's very quickly running out of time. Every minute has become invaluable, as he says, and months have become days, and days have become hours. So it's critical. It's getting down to the wire here, and there's no cure forthcoming yet. And this little lab accident kind of blows up in his face. That's kind of weird. Wonder if that's going to play in. But yeah, he gets called to the bridge. I'm going very quickly through the events. Gets to the bridge, and something's not right. Everything's changed, and we have all of our familiar characters playing different roles. And I got to say, first of all, just as an acting exercise for the cast of Strange New Worlds, this is so much fun. Anson Mount had me crying, laughing. Every
Same.
scene he
Same. He is the unsung hero of this episode because he committed so fully in every aspect of his performance. Not just the lines, not just facial expressions, but micro expressions, body posture, body movements. Just that one eye roll in that first scene. Just so good. He's so good, you guys.
So good. And Bruce and I had an interesting discussion that I was thinking, like, ostensibly Anson Mount, I mean, it's an ensemble cast, but ostensibly Anson Mount is the heroic male lead character, right?
He's the daddy. Come on. He's daddy.
And just the fact that he's so willing to commit to this sycophant character who's such a slimy worm and cowardly and all of these things, it just blows my mind. And I mean, I'm not surprised because Anson Mount's an amazing actor, but that he just commits himself so fully to that character, which is such an inversion of who he usually plays. And I'm not wanting to call out other people or anything like that, but
Oh
like,
no.
I could never picture William Shatner taking on a role like this in the original series. You know, like he's the very typical Hollywood leading man. He's got to be the hero all the time, and I just love that Anson Mount is willing to take on this role and just. I keep wanting to put it in negative terms, but I don't mean like debase himself with this character. I love it. It's so good.
He's so good at sniveling. How I mean, just honestly, just absolutely full commitment. And here's the thing, when people are good at comedy, they're good at everything because comedy is the hardest thing to do. You either got it or you don't. It's not really something you can teach. I mean, you can be taught certain aspects and you can be taught improv and stuff like that, but you're either funny or you're not. There's really no way to teach that kind of timing, and he just nails everything.
Yeah, absolutely. He's so good. And, you know, full props to everyone else as well.
Absolutely. No,
I mean,
everybody's great. Everybody.
yeah.
Everybody.
Um, we still haven't gotten an Ortegas episode, but I love this actor and this character. And full disclosure, cards on the table um between Captain Angel last week and then Ortegas as Sir Adia this week. Oh my god. I'm just like,
Did you need to lay down?
oh man. Okay. The sword fight scene where they're like, you're unarmed, and then she like whack, poof, I have armed myself. I'm like, oh my god, I'm in love. I love her. I'm sorry.
There's no reason to be sorry. I don't think there's anyone around that doesn't love Ortegas and doesn't love Melissa Navia. She's brilliant.
Yeah, she's
So,
incredible.
yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So what are other highlight, like, okay, I gotta call, we're gonna kind of do a mishmash all over the episode and stuff, but
Like we do.
yeah, exactly. Ethan Peck as he was Pollux, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Incredible. I love the like I don't know, he's like using that Vulcan makeup, like he's got the eyebrows, but he's kind of just tilted his head down and done this sinister thing that's just works so well with the hair, of course, and the costume and stuff. But man, he was incredible. Sorry, I was reading people's comments and I'm getting mixed up.
No,
But
you're
he
okay.
was really good too.
Yeah, no, see, yeah, when I saw this episode, I'm like, okay, I thought there isn't anything anyone could do to make Ethan Peck hotter than he already is. I was wrong. Yeah, I was so into that. Yeah, I've already commissioned fan art. So
Yeah.
just how I roll. But just there's that scene that they're having when Ridley is saying that he wants Pollux's help to rescue his brother. He's like, he's your brother, and he's like, how do you know that? And they're having that conversation, and Ridley is like, no, I promise, I'm going to rescue him. I'm going to make things right. And he does this thing where he's just staring at him. He just narrows his eyes for a few seconds, and he's contemplating, and then just like, oh, you're so good. You're so good. You don't even have to say a word. So yeah, really,
No.
really enjoyed Pollux a lot. Gee, big surprise.
Yeah. And I did see the commissioned artwork too. That was very, very lovely.
Yeah, it's not going to be the only one of that. There's going to be at least one more Pollux, maybe two.
Excellent. I also want to call out Babs as Dr. Mabenga and just his reaction to everything. And I didn't really focus on this, but Bruce was saying like one of his absolute favorite moments and deliveries in the whole episode was when he steps on the bridge and just goes, "What the hell?"
I was like, is this a joke? He's just very, is this a joke? Did you guys plan this?
Yeah, that was excellent. Like just he's kind of doing this like, what is going on thing, and he's like, am I hallucinating? Is like, and when I first saw the episode, of course, your brain kind of goes like, oh, he inhaled the thing, maybe he's hallucinating, and I was like, what does this look like from the outside? Like, is he wandering around the bridge? And they're all like, what is going on? But of course we find out this is a reality of sorts around him that has been created for his, or not his benefit. We find out someone else's benefit, Rukia, of course. But yeah, that was, I liked that aspect of like, okay, what's going on? What are the little hints that we're getting as to how this is working and stuff. The one character I want to say that kind of didn't wow me or didn't make a huge impression on me for whatever reason was Jess Bush's kind of holistic healer character. I kind of forgot about her after. I was like, oh wait, right, she was that character. It
Yeah,
was
she didn't get a
fun.
lot
She
of screen
seemed
time.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loved her outfit and her hair. The funny thing is, the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, he's got a lot of WTF moments in this. And the second time I'm watching it, I'm like, why is he not catching on sooner? And then I remember he is super tired. Like Una told
Mm-hmm.
him to go back to his quarters and get some sleep, and he was about to do that, and then he got called to the bridge for medical emergency. This guy is running on empty. So
Yeah.
this is like the worst time to spend 5 hours play acting a book.
Yeah. And the moment I remembered that most clearly was when the Huntress shows up and like she's together with Sir Adia. And I distinctly remembered his daughter saying, like, oh, I wish they got together. And he's like, well, that's not how the story goes. And it takes him quite a while to go, wait a minute. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then that's when I was like, oh yeah, he's really tired. I forgot about that. So that was clever to, because I think if he was firing on all cylinders, he would have, in that moment particularly, realized right away, like,
Yeah,
wait a minute, that's what my daughter said. This is all coming from her. Yeah.
indeed. Indeed.
Okay. Celia Rose Gooding as Queen Nev,
Mm, mm,
incredible. And
mm.
what a costume too. I love it.
Glorious. I do not know how she did the pointy things on her fingers, but man,
Mhm.
that would have to be really difficult. Like, if you just suddenly need to rub your eye and you're like, "Oh, no, 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 I'm
Oh,
gonna put my eye out." That can't be
definitely.
easy to get used to, but, oh, she was glorious. Absolutely
Yeah.
glorious.
And I love that that's kind of, I wouldn't say an inversion of personality, but
Oh, no, no, no.
an inversion of role, which I love, that she's the cadet and now she's Queen Nev, and
Queen.
that was kind of
You know,
fun.
kinda predicting the future, you know,
Mhm.
because Uhura is definitely a queen.
Absolutely. um, Christina Chong as Princess Thalia. First of all, my wife Nikki, her gown was what she was just like, like she had to like, that was incredible. The costuming and
Mm,
wardrobe all across the board is
yes.
incredible.
Mhm.
Um, but her performance as Princess Thalia, so much fun, such a crazy difference from what we've seen, of course, of La'an. And I do have to say though, Bruce had a really cringe moment in the previous episode, which was Pike talking like a pirate, which I loved. I thought that was hilarious, and I loved it.
Same.
This episode, I had the singing bit, and I know it's meant to be cringe, and that's how everybody's reacting to it. But I was just like, ooh, like major secondhand embarrassment, even though I know that's what they're going for. But I was just like, oof. Yeah,
Yeah, I felt none of that. I thought it was freaking hilarious.
I thought it was funny too, but oof.
Yeah, didn't bother me because it was just so in character and just how she totally went for it. And it's like, maybe she actually does sing because she has a lot of power in that voice. But I just I found it so funny. What I also didn't know before I saw this the first or the second time was that is her actual dog.
Yes, Runa Ewok, right? Is
Oh,
the dog's
yes.
real name?
Yep.
That's wonderful.
Mhm. 'Cause I was saying to Dave when we watched it the second time, I was saying, "Now pay attention to the dog because this dog loves Chrissy Chong. Like, this dog really loves her. Just watch the dog." It's just and there's that scene where the dog is, like, licking her décolletage. It's just and Chrissy's just completely oblivious to it because acting, and it's her
Mhm.
dog. So she's used to this stuff, and I just love that she found a way to get her dog into an episode via, telling someone on the production team, "Hey, do you think, in this ridiculous episode we could get my dog?" And he's like, "Oh, I
I
don't know,
love
I'll
it.
ask. I'll go ask."
Sure.
And it came out, "Yeah, let's get the dog in there. We're gonna make a costume for her." We're what? So
Yeah, oh, the costume. The costume took me the second watch to notice, and I was
mhm,
like, "Wait." And we had to pause. It was like, the little costume on the dog. That was terrific.
mhm.
Wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah. So they're all great. Like they're all just incredible. Rebecca Romaine as Zymira the Huntress,
Mhm.
when she kind of finally shows up, again looks incredible, and I just love the little, I don't know, I she was great too. Her makeup and everything was perfect.
Yes.
No.
Glorious.
Indeed. All right. Let's talk about Bruce Horak as Hemmer in this episode, because he, to me, absolutely stole the show, which is incredible to think about given the huge personalities we see here. He remains himself because possibly his telepathy, something like that, is making him keep his own personality, which in retrospect, given the events of next episode, I'm really glad that we got real Hemmer in this episode and not some crazy character that isn't actually him, right? So
Yes.
that was excellent. And so many great moments, like what would an earth magician say? Abracadabra? Oh, I like that.
And he's cutting the bolt of the lock. Abracadabra. Yeah, Himmer, just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I love that basically he was supposed to, have his mind controlled, but he felt this pressure against his mind, and he's like, "Oh, hell no." And just
Mhm.
like, Not today. Not today, Satan." and just and just fended it off. Didn't work for Spock, because when I found that out, I'm like, oh, maybe Spock is also not mind controlled. Oh, nope, there he is as a wizard. Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Totally. Yeah, and I love that like initially he's kind of skeptical, like freaking out. They're carrying him away. He's like, "What's going on?" And then he
I'm your
gets
superior officer.
yeah, but then he just gets into it. And I
Mhm.
love that he's like, sure, I'll play along. Okay." And my favorite moment is when he says, "Okay, everyone look away. This will blind you." And I said, "What about you?" And you expect him to say, "Well, I'm already blind." He's like, "I am a wizard." Like,
Yeah.
yes, I love it. Such a, yeah, just understated line, but I love it. It subverts your expectations a bit. He was so
Yes.
into it.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, of course, his magic of science and hits the communicator, and they all beam away, and everyone
Mhm.
who's in character is like, "What?" I like this magic you call science. This is
Yes.
good.
I like this science. Yeah. The funny thing is that we've never really seen Hemmer have fun before.
Hmm. And I mean, we've seen precious little of Hemmer, period, which is something we're going to talk about a bit later too. In that he was only in um like 6 episodes, 5 really, because the premiere episode he was just there at the end, no lines kind of thing. He's not in a lot of episodes at all, and that's really too bad.
That could be not necessarily because of that's what they were doing with the character. It could have something to do with the actor as well. I just
Hmm.
don't know. But
Yeah.
I don't know that it's because they didn't want to feature him more. I really just I don't know what was behind that.
Yeah.
But I don't think they were purposely not
No.
trying to have him, but
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'm thinking there are external factors that we
Mhm.
just aren't privy to, really. I'm it could have even been, I mean, who knows, right? Like they were doing this at the height of COVID as well. It could have been
Could have been
quarantine
COVID.
measures. Who
Could
knows? Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause, especially, if I don't know that much about Bruce Horak except that he's a really cool dude. I know that, but, it
Hmm.
could be that he has a pre-existing condition that makes him more susceptible, and so they had to be even extra, 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 extra careful.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
I I saw and I don't want to speculate or anything, but I saw a post or something by him somewhere where he said, "And my old friend cancer," or something like that. So I don't know if that's a
Mm,
personal or just, I have no idea, but I did kind of note that, and I wondered, but
yeah,
that's,
that will wreck your immune system,
oh
so
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I have members of my extended family who are cancer survivors and stuff, and what they've had to deal with COVID has been pretty scary. So it's, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've danced around the fun, happy aspects of the episode. We should dive into the meat and kind of what's behind this all. They're at this nebula, and that's what's created this fantasy world out of the mind of Rukia, Dr. Mbenga's daughter. And they've discovered that she's unhappy, that they she the nebula figures that they've been trapping her in the transporter, and
Mhm,
they've been letting her out, and Mbenga realizes that all of this is a product of her mind, and goes and finds her in his quarters and scans her, and she's completely free of the illness. But it's not a, like, they can't just take her away from there. She'll have it come back. And we get this really heart-wrenching scene where And I mean, there's all kinds of metaphors and allegories and all kinds of things. The Elysian Kingdom, right? The heavenly kingdom. You know, there's a lot going on here where, and I forgot to put my phone on silent. I apologize. Uh, where she has the king, Dr. Mabenga, has to make a choice and let go of the daughter he loves to save her, basically, or hold on to her, knowing that that will destroy her. And it's so brutally heart-wrenching. And I gotta say, one small weakness of this episode is I think the first time I watched it through, you kind of forget how dire the situation was at the beginning. So I've seen
Mhm.
a lot of people saying, like, oh, you just sent your daughter off with this thing you didn't know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you
Mm.
listen to the episode and you pay attention, he is out of time. Like, there's
Mhm.
no choice. This is a sliver of hope. And if he doesn't do it, she's dead. Like,
Mhm.
that's, and maybe the episode could have communicated it in that moment a little bit better and kind of reminded people of that or something, because I've been noticing there's a disconnect there. And
Yeah.
so, maybe not entirely the fault of the audience, but pay attention more, people, too. Um,
Well,
you know.
yeah, no, I agree with that because, it's interesting because there are other things where the episode has kinda held your hand a little too much, where it was just like,
Mhm.
"Yes, we know Chapel has got a hypo spray in her sleeve. We can freaking see it. You don't have to show us the shot of her looking over to her wrist." And then they just, they're like, "Well, okay, if you're gonna be grown-ups about it, here's all of the information that you're going to need, and we're not
Mhm.
going to remind you of it. That's on you."
Yeah.
So, yeah. But that was I wasn't upset by that because I'm like, "Okay, he has a choice to either, you know, let his daughter die because it's not likely he's going to find a cure that quickly, and yeah, he could keep putting her in the transporter buffer, but that's not living.
Mhm.
How is that fair to her? She's not experiencing life while being in stasis like that." So it's just, I understand his decision because
Mhm.
that's the whole part about being a parent is letting that child go, not necessarily, at that age, but if in this situation, letting your child be who they are meant to be who they want to be, and even though that means that you're going to be left behind, because that's the nature of being a parent. You're
Mhm.
going to get left behind. Your child is going to grow up into adult and go and make their own life. And yes, you will always be their mom or their dad or whatever you want to be, their guardian, what have you. You're always going to be that. But it's not the same after that because now they are a fully fledged human capable of making their own way in the world.
Mhm.
And so it's I saw that as a metaphor for that, for as well as being able to let that child become who they're going to become.
Yeah. Yeah, Bruce and I had a very similar discussion, and of course, Bruce, father of two daughters, right? And
Mhm.
and in the midst of all of this, with both of them at various levels, right? So
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate that. Like, um, that's a really strong metaphor there for, you know, letting this person go and not knowing if they're going to be okay or not, but not really being able to have a say in that anymore. That's
Yeah,
tough.
because it's her decision.
Hmm.
It's her life, her decision.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Brandy, what are your thoughts about the return of Rukia, where we see her grown up and she says, "You made the right decision, basically, and I've had a wonderful life, and I've written my own stories, and all of this." Were you, how do I put it? Like, Would you have preferred you not know, or are you just glad to know?
No, I'd always rather know.
Same here.
I'd always rather know. And see, the thing is that when the glitter started trickling back in, I'm like, "Oh, she's coming back as an adult," because that's
Mhm.
immediately what I thought. You
Yep,
know,
totally.
time is a perception. Time is not a constant. And so
Mhm.
and I thought, well, there's this, this giant disembodied uh entity that lives in this nebula and is pretty much all powerful within this nebula. So yeah, time not constant.
Yeah. I've seen people argue, and in the comments I'm seeing TJ and Punk Rock Zoologist both saying that, maybe the ambiguity would have been better, maybe not knowing, maybe finding out later would have been an interesting character arc. And I don't deny that. I think that, like, that would have been an interesting thing to explore. The totally just selfish me wanting to know that everything's going to be okay. I'm so glad we got to see her.
Well, the way that I look at that is, if we were talking about an adult to begin with, sure, make it ambiguous. We're talking about a child. We're
Mm,
talking about his daughter. I needed that closure, and so did the
yeah.
audience. So, that's my personal opinion on that, is like, if it were an adult, sure, go ahead. Maybe we'll come back to that later, but no, I needed that instant gratification that, yes, she is okay, and everything is marvelous, and, she's beautiful and amazing and writing her own stories and having her own adventures, and, she's having a great time with Deborah, all right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Deborah's awesome. So,
Deborah is awesome. Yeah. Also, just the fact that this episode made me look up the Wikipedia article about the Boltzmann brain
Boltzmann
and
brain.
learn all about that. I'm like, thank you, Star Trek. Like, awesome. That's cool. I think I'd heard that term before, but wasn't intimately familiar with it. But really cool using concepts like that. That's awesome.
Yep. Really liked that. Science!
Science, indeed. Oh, Hammer, he's so good.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so anything we haven't talked about with regards to this episode that you'd like to bring up? And same for folks in the comments if there's anything that we've missed. And then final thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I do love that Mbenga's so tired that he's like, "Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot that Ralph Ralph actually betrays me. Yeah, shoulda seen that coming. Like, I knew Pollux was gonna do it, but I forgot about this guy. I really need to sleep. Really need to sleep. Oh, yes. Wait, we
Oh,
forgot. Benny
yes.
Russell wrote the book."
Yep. That was great. Which, I've done a little bit of looking up and researching since. I think that's the very first indication that Benny Russell was a real flesh and blood person who wrote
Mhm,
books. So
mhm.
everything that we've learned about him before has been in either a vision from the prophets or a false vision from the Pa Wraiths. That's the only times we've seen him, right? So that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yep.
I
Pretty
love that.
freaking cool.
And it's cool because yeah, it's a fantasy story, but there's definitely like spacey elements in it as well,
Mhm.
like Castor and Pollux and little things like that that I'm like, I could see this coming from the mind of a science fiction author writing this for a kid maybe or something like that. Like, yeah, totally. It works
Yes.
for me.
I also liked the, artwork in the book.
Mhm. Yeah, and every time we got a new character introduction, just the flash to the book. I thought that was a really cool um choice to make for
Yes,
that. That was cool.
because we've seen vague pictures of the book here and there, but this is when the first time, and probably the last time, we get a really good look at the way these characters are drawn.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So final thoughts and ratings for um the Elysian Kingdom? Wow, I'm tired too.
Yes, well, I've got COVID brain fog, so there we go. I love this episode even with his
Sorry, I just had to That's a great comment. Yep.
Yes, I agree. Um, yeah, I loved this episode. I loved how committed the entire cast was. Uh, even with the sadness of Rukia, not being able to hang out with her father anymore, but she's not alone and she's happy, she's healthy. She'll never know death, y'all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't any father want that for his daughter? So yeah, it had I mean, it's probably one of the most TOS episodes I have ever seen.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
and it's not even TOS. Um, it's probably more TOS than a lot of TOS episodes, but I think it was really well done. Uh, Glorious to look at, just a romp, but also, you know, progressing some things as well, also for Mbenga. And it will be interesting to see where he goes from here because he doesn't have that thing over his head anymore. And it makes me wonder what he's going to do with the rest of his life. So I will give this one super hot wizard Pollux.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think like the everything from the wardrobe department to the set dressing, like I like that it's still the Enterprise. You can still
Mhm.
get to the computers and stuff, but there's just all this other stuff, and it's beautiful, beautiful episode. So much fun from all of the actors, and then the poignant ending, and the, to me, a little bit of a surprise that the Mbenga, that storyline wraps up so quickly. Interestingly, we won't we will continue to see fallout from it. Um, we'll mention in the next episode as well, which is interesting. I'm glad they're going that route and not just forgetting about all of this now. So
Yes.
yeah, I have to give it one epic sword fight by Sir Adia that makes me feel feelings. Yep.
Yes. One thing I forgot to talk about is the stuff that's going on the bridge before everything changes, which is Pike saying,
Mm,
"I could get
yes.
used to this. It's so nice and quiet. We're just doing our thing. We're exploring." And Spock is like, "You're jinxing it."
I love that.
He's like, "Whatever." And then when they try to leave, and Ortegas is like, "You gonna say the thing?" And he finally says it. He says, "Hit it." And she hits it and nothing happens. And
I'm hitting it, sir.
it kind of a little bit, just a little bit makes that sound like the Millennium Falcon who trying to go to hyperdrive when the
Hmm.
hyperdrive's deactivated. Just a little bit reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
A little bit of that and the Excelsior sabotage.
Yeah. Oh,
It,
yeah.
like a combination of those two sounds.
Perhaps you did indeed jinx it.
Yeah.
That was fun. I did appreciate that as well, for sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that said, shall we move on to all
To
those who
aliens. I'm
wander?
sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
There were actually echoes of Aliens, and Alien 3 in this episode visually, for
Hmm.
sure,
Yeah.
which is yeah,
Interesting.
it definitely super reminded me of that franchise. Not
Yeah.
the 4th one, we don't talk about that one.
There was. I don't think there was a fourth one. I don't know what you're
No,
talking about.
there wasn't a 4th one. Just like there wasn't a 4th Indiana Jones movie, so
Yeah, no, of course not. What are you talking
mhm,
about?
mhm.
Anyway, yeah. So all those who wander, which I'm pretty sure has to be from the J.R.R. Tolkien quote from Lord of the Rings, right? Not all
Mhm.
those who wander are
Wander are
lost.
lost.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I kind of did a little searching to see if that phrase was from anything before that, but I think that's the only one I could find. So, uh,
Agree. I that's what I thought, you know.
mhm. And one of my favorite quotes from Tolkien as well, which I'll probably say about 100 times if you give me 100 Tolkien quotes. you know. But that's why I have to say one of my favorite and not just my favorite, because then I'm caught in a lie. So
Yes.
All those who wander, if you take it as that quote, not all who wander are lost. Really applying, I think, in this episode to Uhura. We've got
Mhm.
this interesting thread of her through this story, because at the start of the story, we find out that her assignment on Enterprise is at an end. Her and the other cadet, whose name I've
Chi
already forgotten.
Her
What
name
was
is
it?
Chia Pet.
Oh,
No,
yes,
it's
Chia.
Chia Pet is what I call her, 'cause
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Sorry, Lieutenant or Cadet Chia, I'm sorry.
oh boy. Okay. This episode, there's a few ways it throws curveballs, by the way, as well.
Mm.
And um, my wife, Nikki, is so smart. We were watching this episode, and um, I had this moment later. Like, I watched it once without her, and then the second time I watched it with her. And with this particular character of Ensign and now Lieutenant, oh my
Duke.
goodness, Duke,
Duke.
thank you. Duke
Mhm.
of Earl. That's what I got going through my head with him all the time. But um, I was like, slightly later in the episode, after they land with the shuttlecraft, I was like, oh, he's gonna die.
Oh, yeah, when I saw that both of them were there, I'm like, "Well, they're the red shirts."
This is why my wife is so much smarter than me, because it was at his promotion ceremony that she was
I
like,
no,
oh,
that's
he's
when
gonna
I
die.
yeah, because 'cause I'm like, "You are introducing us to 2 characters, you have named them,
Yeah.
they are so dead."
Hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, they really are, which is a bit of a curveball the episode throws us to distract us from something else that's going to happen,
Mhm.
which we'll get to. I have feelings about, I'm sure a lot of people do. But my first thought with this episode was they're going to deliver these power cells to Space Station K7. Yay, we're going to
Yay,
see Deep
K7
Space K7.
tribbles!
No,
Yeah,
we never
no.
get to see it.
No,
Because
they're delivering glorified batteries. Of
yeah, I
course, we're not
know.
gonna see at least they're not, at least they're not gonna run into a guy with a bunch of little furry balls, so
Yeah. Um, which is another thing that has come up this season that I'm not a huge criticism, but it's something we've talked about before as well, I think, which is so we've got this mission, they're splitting up, these two shuttles are going to the surface to
never split
rescue
at the party.
I know. And the Enterprise is going to K7 with number one in command. And just yet again, I kind of feel like we're getting short shrift on Rebecca Romaine as number one. She's
Mhm.
kind of, at least in the back half of this season, relegated to the background. Like, we had the one big episode with her, but she's kind of not really been much around. And I was
Yeah.
just slightly disappointed again with this episode that, like, okay, she's off taking the Enterprise on this thing, but we never get to see any of that. So just a
Yeah.
mild disappointment, because I just want to see more of her character, you know?
Yeah, you really just would think that the first officer would have more to do on the show,
Hmm.
but maybe that has something to do with Rebecca and
It could
her
again.
schedule and commitments, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, because everybody loves her as far as I know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It could be some of the other stuff we talked about too. Like, who knows exactly what's going on, but it's definitely enough that I've noticed it this season that I'm
mhm,
like, that's kind of weird. Um, by the way, this whole beginning scene, I'm enjoying all of it, with Lon coming in and initially
mhm.
refusing the breakfast, and then like, oh, this is amazing. The extra cheese, yes, please, and all that stuff. And Spock doing the dishes with an apron.
Mhm.
Just that made me really happy.
The look on his face when Pike takes off the apron and just puts it over Spock's head, "Take over on the dishes." He's like, yes, of course." He was just like, "I thought I came here to do a briefing, but apparently not. I'll just be washing dishes over here."
Yeah, I love that. And
Yes.
Pike's whole uh taking the kids in the station wagon thing. That was
Yeah.
fun.
Sir, station wagon?
Don't make me
If
turn this
anybody
car.
needs Yeah, if anybody needs to go, now's the time. Don't make me turn this car around. I've heard those words before
Oh,
from my
yes.
parents. So, yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely. So yeah, the Enterprise is off to K7. The two shuttles, they're cut off. We learn like, okay, that's why this has come up. They're cut off from the Enterprise. They're on their own. They land on this planet to discover the wreckage or the crashed USS Peregrine, which is not a Constitution class starship apparently, but made with the same parts as the Constitution
Mm.
class. So it was an
Yes.
interesting choice.
It is, and that scene where you first see the Peregrine in the distance, that is so LV-426, y'all. So
Hmm.
LV-426. The way that the ship is set on the ground, the way it's tilted, the
Oh,
angle
yeah.
at which you're looking at it, all very, very, very familiar.
Yeah.
Especially even all the rocky formations and how the rocks are kind of curved over and just like, "Yeah, I know what you're doing here. I know what you're doing here." And I will say this as well. When they were doing the previously on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, because they kind of give stuff away by showing you this stuff and like, oh, this
Yeah.
is going to be a Gorn episode. So
Hmm.
this girl was completely unsurprised by the appearance of the Gorn.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, that is an interesting thing that like I don't know, there's got to be a way around that. Like because it really does give everything away, I think.
Mm. Hmm.
You know. So yeah, I was like, okay, it's the Gorn, we find these bodies and it's pretty grim, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, it's the Gorn. We know it's the Gorn. We know it's the Gorn. And then you get that overhead shot of the blood streaks and
Oh,
they
you
realize
definitely
it's
know.
the Gorn. And you're like, yeah, we know.
Well,
So,
they haven't been able to access the captain's final log entry yet, and once
mhm,
they have accessed that, then they know.
yeah, for sure. Um, and there's a lot of really interesting things going on with the characters here. And this was a lot of what my earlier discussion with Bruce on this episode ended up being about was yeah, there's the horror movie tropes, there's the aliens, that kind of thing. Um, which is fine. They do it well. It's well done, I think. That's never been my favorite thing in the world, but
Mm,
they did it well here. But for me, like the character stuff in this episode is really what makes it. And I think like a
mhm.
lot of views I'm seeing online, a lot of the discussion is just glossing right over that stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the setting and the plot or like the bare bones of the plot do not an episode make. Like that's
Mm-mm.
not that seems to be what everyone's focusing on. And to me, it's 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 La'an seeing herself in this little girl and
Yes, thank you.
the terror in this girl's eyes. And it goes back to La'an, who's always so strong. And that terror is reflected in those eyes and it's played so well. And then the moment where she's kind of getting at this girl, like, why didn't you warn them? You could have prevented this, blah, blah, blah. And Mbenga comes in and says, don't talk to my daughter that way, my patient. And you're just like,
Mhm.
dang. And I don't know what it is, if it was a look that Mbenga gave right before this, but I remember something firing off in my brain as he looked at this girl, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder if he's thinking of his daughter." And then, like 3
Absolutely.
seconds later, he said that line, and I was like, "Whoa, that was amazing!" Like that
Yeah.
they planted that seed, and then they were like, "Yep, you're right. That's what he's thinking about because he's that good an actor. You can look at his face and realize he's thinking that." It's damn, these actors are amazing.
Which is also an echo of Aliens, because
Yes.
if you've seen the extended version of Aliens, you know that Ripley left behind a child.
Mhm.
And, that child unfortunately grew old and passed away before Ripley was found in the lifeboat, and brought back to Earth. And so when she finds Newt on LV-426, that mother instinct kicks in a gigantic way. And there is nothing so powerful as a mother defending her child.
Mhm.
She will mess you up. And so I was a little worried about Mbenga, but he realizes what he's doing. He understands what he's doing. He even talks about it. And I'm like, well, at
Yeah.
least he's smart enough and he's emotionally intelligent enough to understand why he did what he did, why he said what he said in that moment.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that there's that follow-up conversation, and Lon thinks that it's about her, and he's like, "No, no,
It's about
no."
me.
I really liked that. That was great. Oh, okay. I want to talk just briefly about the alien makeup too on this guy.
Mhm.
Again, reminding me,
Buckley.
yeah, Buckley, reminding me of the prosthetic work they did for the Children of the Comet guys a little bit. I'm
Yep,
like, there's something similar going on here. This looks really good.
agreed.
I love it.
Mhm. It's so well done. So well done. You just absolutely believe all of it.
Hmm.
And I love that because it's this combination. Like, obviously, I know that there's some digital work in there, but because most of it is practical, it's just kinda all seamless.
Yeah,
And just the way, parts of the face moved and the eyes moved, mouth moved, all of those things. Just, the makeup department, the practical effects department, you guys are freaking killing it.
yeah. It looks incredible for sure. And something that I think once you get through the whole episode, you kind of forget about because rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, that was great. That was so good. Ah, man. There's so much in this episode. Oh man. Okay.
So much.
Yeah.
Also,
So
here's my question. Just going back to them being outside, getting out of the shuttles. Why the hell didn't Spock have his hood up? You're gonna get
mm,
frostbite on those ears, baby. Come on.
mhm.
Come on. Uhura was the smart one. She had her hood full up. It was so cold there. You don't go walking around outside with your hoods down, folks, unless you are an Enar.
Especially if you grew up on, a desert type world and keep your quarters 10 degrees warmer than everyone else does. Like you'd think you'd be the first one to be all bundled up, but
You would think. I just have this feeling, and there's nothing to prove this one way or the other, that Vulcans are just impervious to environmental factors like temperature.
mhm.
So they're just kind of like, no, I'm not cold. But you come from a really hot planet. Yeah, I'm not cold. I'm fine.
Also, he's he mistakenly calls Duke ensign. Is there no end to
Uh-oh.
drinking games? Human drinking games or whatever?
No,
Nope.
there is not. There truly is not.
Yeah. At
I
the
will
same
I will
time, in the
say,
back of my mind, I was like, Spock was the one to forget. Come on, Spock, you're
mm,
slipping. Which might be a little hint of something that's going on.
to be fair, Spock wasn't there when he was promoted.
Oh, that's true.
He was on the
That's
bridge.
true.
So he was not there for that promotion ceremony. So that is so I'm going to let that one slide. But I will
Okay.
say I am very pleased to see a more fluffy person in Starfleet,
Hmm.
promoted to lieutenant. Well done,
Yeah.
Duke. I'm sorry it was so short-lived, but
Yeah.
dude, you good job. Good job. Well
Hmm.
done.
Absolutely.
Now just get some curvy girls up in there.
Yeah, we've got Tilly. We need more. We need more. Come
More,
on.
more. There are so
Absolutely.
many of us. There's no there's so many choices.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we've got now I'm I've seen a lot of comments about the Gorn and how this doesn't match what we've seen before. And most of it, like, you can kind of, I think, play around with it in your head and make it make sense. Like there's nothing that I've seen that really makes me go, hmm. until I saw this comment by Matthew. And thank you, because I didn't think of this one, because Dr. McCoy talks about delivering Gorn infants in the Kelvin timeline. And I forgot about that line. I think you can still make it work, but it's funny that it paints a different picture than what we originally thought, I think.
Well, see, and that's the funny thing. How much canon information do we have about the Gorn at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have that TOS episode, right?
Yeah.
We know they have weddings because of Lord X.
Yes.
And then we have what little we see in La'an's memories in, what is it, episode 4, if I remember right? So,
something like that.
And a mention of them by McCoy in Kelvin timeline. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's a lot of leeway you can go with here.
I think you can massage things and make it work. There's nothing breaking anything that I've seen so far. And some people will disagree.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I personally don't see problems, except, like I said, I'm going to have to really think about McCoy delivering Gorn infants now. That was woof.
You know, it would be later in the technology of Starfleet and whatnot, so maybe maybe, you know, if it was in a sealed container, and you know, he had one of those boxes where he could put his hands in gloves and, you know, do it that way. Why would you even need to deliver Gorn infants is what I want to know.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were eggs. But
yeah.
Do you need to deliver an egg? It's just one of those weird things.
Is a Gorn bursting out of a body in which an egg was implanted considered a live birth, possibly? Like,
probably.
Probably. Anyway. Yeah. I don't know. It just paints an interesting picture.
It's to say the least.
So yeah, we get 4 Gorn born here as they burst out of this alien. One of them is killed pretty much right away. And we've got this interesting thing of the alpha, you know, fighting for dominance, right? And one of them will emerge as the alpha, which ultimately will help them out, I think, but it'll leave them with a pretty formidable opponent. And there's so much in this episode really well done, and I think La'an really communicates the fear of these so well, but at the same time she maintains her poise and professionalism throughout, which I really appreciate it. I'm glad they didn't do the, like, she's obviously suffering from PTSD. She's had horrible experiences, but they didn't break her, you know, and she's so good in this episode.
Yeah, she's definitely, you know, giving me strong Ripley vibes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I've got to say, like, even though the horror aspects and the alien aspects aren't my favorite thing about this episode, these little Gorn are terrifying. And so, first of all, when they kill Cadet Chia, that's so fast, and you're like, oh my god, and Chapel manages to escape them. But for me, that scene where Duke is attacked and pulled away, I'm not too proud to admit I was literally doing the thing where, like, I pulled my legs up onto the couch and was like, oh, like, that got to me. I was really freaked out by that, and well done.
Yeah. Guess who else was really freaked out by that? Spock.
Yes, which we're going to talk about, because
I mean, have you ever seen that look on his face this season?
Yeah, that was incredible. Ethan Peck killed it in this episode too, and yeah, we'll talk about Spock for sure, because I have a lot of thoughts on that and what he goes through in this episode, and how it's making me rethink some of the things from previous episodes too, that because I don't think this is a just this episode thing. Like, this has been building to this.
Mhm.
We may as well talk about it right now. So yeah, they have to antagonize the Gorn and get them mad, and Spock does that thing where he says he's allowing that anger into his heart, and he yells that primal scream and attacks them. And he's pulled out at the last second by Sam Kirk, and he goes to attack Sam, and it's like, whoa, and all that stuff. And it's clear he's not able to keep a bottle on some of his emotions. And that had me thinking of the Serene Squall and everything he went through in that episode, where he spent the
Mhm.
entire time being manipulated emotionally by Captain Angel. And then, of course, the thing with Chapel at the end, which I'm sure we've all agreed wasn't just a one-sided thing there. There was
Yeah.
some emotions awoken in Spock there as well. So like, this feels like a culmination, or not a culmination, but a continuation of all of that, where he's let little bits out here and there, and now he's gotten to this point where he can't bottle them back up, he can't force them back in, which is really interesting. He plays that really well. That final scene with Chapel is like, I held my breath through the whole scene, where
Mhm.
she goes to touch him and she grabs it, or he grabs her arm, and they're both staring down at him holding her arm like that. And it's just like, what's going to happen right now? Like, this
Mhm.
could go many dark ways right now. And that hug, I feel I both Nikki and I, the whole time, anytime Spock in the last half of this episode was on screen, we're both going like, oh, Spock, no. And we
Mhm.
just felt so bad for him. By the way,
Yeah.
the puns in the titles, in the comments with Gorn, you guys are, I love you guys.
Yep.
I'm trying to like, I'm like, these are funny. Sorry.
Um, yeah, well, see, here's the thing, I identify so hard with Spock in this
Mhm.
episode because, um, I'm, usually a very good-natured person, and, there have been times where I have been pushed beyond the boundaries
Mhm.
and have become, kind of a rage monster. And, generally, it doesn't seem it's never, culminated in violence, like physical violence or anything like that, but, I can be pretty scary when I have been pushed past those boundaries. Everybody has a breaking point. Everybody has a breaking point where they can no longer choose their behavior.
Mhm.
And, so when he purposely allows that rage into his heart to do what needs to be done, it broke my heart that he had to do that because I thought, "There is not an easy way to close the lid on that box again."
Yeah.
There just isn't, especially for a Vulcan, because look at their history. They
Mhm.
nearly destroyed themselves because they couldn't stop warring with each other. And it was
Yeah.
only because of Surrock's teachings and turning their minds to logic instead of allowing their emotions to rule them. Of course, I think they took it a bit far in that regard, but it saved their species, you
Mhm.
know? So for him to lose that control purposely and then not be able to control it and put it back in that box, I'm like, "Oh, dude, I know how that feels."
Oh, yeah. My heart was breaking for him, honestly, that whole time. And like, at the funeral, which we'll get to, his
Mhm.
his fists clenching like that, and Chapel kind of noticing and seeing him leave. And from that moment all the way to the end, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know where this is going. And you know the Spock we see in the original series is so buttoned down compared to what we see
Mhm.
here and in the cage and all of that. And I think obviously what this is leading to is what leads to that, like what
Mhm.
makes him choose that path. And I'm thinking it's going to be because Strange New Worlds hasn't let me down in this respect yet. I think it's going to be an interesting circuitous route. And
Absolutely.
Bruce and I were kind of speculating about things because we know Cybok is out there, and we were like,
Mhm.
"Ooh, how could that figure in?" and all this stuff, and because that's one thing like they've done with Spock and T'Pring is every episode you expect like, oh, there's going to be a big thing and it's going to very obviously connect a line to the T'Pring we see in Amok Time. Oh, no, that hasn't happened yet. It's taken a left turn instead of a right or whatever. So they're drawing these things out and crafting an interesting story, and I could see them doing something similar with Spock. And my thought, this is just pure speculation, who knows what they'll do. It's probably going to be a million times better than anything I come up with, but what if he does decide to become more emotional? Like we have that scene with Spock and Chapel at the end where she says that's not weakness, that's human, and they embrace. What if that starts to make him think like maybe I can kind of experiment with this and become a bit more human and embrace that side, and then something disastrous happens, or he sees Cybok and sees how unhinged Cybok has become or something, you know what I mean? And maybe that makes him realize, maybe he does something monstrous and Spock realizes I can't, I can't play around with this, or who knows, right? Like there's so many really interesting things they could do with this that just has my mind spinning and like, ooh, what could they do? I love it.
Yeah, I here's the thing about Sybok though. Yeah, he can eschew logic and be all emotional, but that is not uh you can't use that as a roadmap as to why you shouldn't, you know, investigate what it's like to have emotions, okay?
Hmm.
Because that's the thing. Sybok, full Vulcan.
Hmm.
Spock, half Vulcan. So it's not even the same kind of situation, but I'm certain in my headcanon that that definitely plays a part.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, what I've thought of some writers like, no, that's dumb. This is way better. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, totally.
I'm sure.
I don't know. But yeah, I'm really excited. Like it's the things that worried me about Strange New Worlds when it started. And I was a little bit more, I think, trepidatious than most Star Trek fans were. Everyone was like really excited about the show. And I'm like, yeah, but now I'm like, oh man, the things they can do that totally subvert our expectations, because I'm not a television writer, so I didn't
Mhm.
think of any of this. And I'm like, oh, this is so worth it. They could really play around with stuff in really good, great ways. So I'm excited.
Same.
So that's all that happens in this episode, right? Nothing
Yep.
bad
Uh-huh.
happens.
Yeah, there's a funeral for Chia Pet and Lieutenant Duke at the end.
Yeah,
And you know,
that's
there's
it.
that moment that's that moment when Spock is with Chapel when she's trying to calm him down and after the hug, and she's giving him that doe-eyed kiss me face, and I'm like,
Oh
"Ugh."
man,
That actually made me go, "Ugh."
I know. And her eyes do that thing where they like
Mhm,
glance really quickly at his lips and back
mhm.
up at him.
Oh,
And
Jess is brilliant in that. She's perfect. Oh, no, I froze. Oh,
was that me? I
no.
think
No,
that
that
was
was
me.
me. It was totally me.
Oh, okay.
I think it was me.
Okay. Um, but yeah, and they're very close, right? Like he's and then he just turns and walks away, and I was like, oh,
Mhm.
good.
Yeah. Oh, they're saying you were the one who froze. I'm sorry.
Was it? Okay, I kind of thought it might have been me. I was like, oh, that didn't look good. But yeah, okay.
I was certain it was going to be me because our internet has been weird all day, except for right now.
Yay!
Woohoo!
So did you have thoughts on the Chapel Spock almost kiss? You were not pleased with the doe-eyed look.
Well, it was just a little too much original series, Christine. That was
Mm,
my only problem with it. And I mean, I don't blame her. I mean, look at him.
yeah, yeah,
And she's adorable. He- He's a tease. Is what he
yeah,
is. So
yeah,
I don't blame her, but that particular aspect was just a little too TOS for me. But,
yeah. I could see that.
I'll let it slide. I'll let it slide.
Yeah,
And, yeah, he dented a freaking bulkhead with his bare fist. Do
yeah.
not get in the way of
Well, that made
angry
me
Spock.
think of Amok Time as well with that desk viewer, right? And he walks up and just poof, poof, and it turns it into a flattened piece of metal. That was,
Yeah.
yeah. Ah, all right. I guess we got to talk about this. Mm. Um, so Hemmer gets sprayed by the Gorn venom that they figure is designed to blind its victim, and he gets that little quip like, "Oh, poor choice of target." Um, they do the whole thing. I'm kind of glossing over again. It's just not my favorite thing. There's a bunch of action stuff. They get the Gorn. They kill it. Yay. Uh, but they Hemmer and La'an both realize that's not the end of it. He says he can't sense it telepathically, but he knows his own body. There's something wrong, and that venom deposited eggs. And he decides that he has to sacrifice himself for the good of his crew, which, um, you know, based on everything he said in previous episodes and this episode, you're like, yeah, I mean, that's where this was all going. And it's so brutal. It's so
Mhm.
brutal because, like, A, I love this character so much, and B, as we've said, he's been in only half of the episodes, and still in just that amount of time has made me love this character in a cast of amazing characters. And this scene, as much as I hate to lose Hemmer, this scene is so beautiful on so many levels. And the final piece of advice he gives Uhura to open herself, and like what that means for Uhura's character going forward, and how she's going to take that. What was it? Open yourself, make a home for yourself amongst others, and you will find joy more often than sadness. And I love this character. I love this actor. And apparently the actor is still going to be involved in Strange New Worlds somehow, is something I've seen tweeted and stuff. But this character is so good, and I'm so sad to see him go. And now I'm just blabbing away. I don't know. Thoughts, Brandi? I'm sorry. I know I can see your yeah.
Um, I have trouble talking about this.
Yeah.
Because of the goodbyes, and everyone begging him, "Come on, we can put you in stasis. We can, induce coma until we can figure out we can find a way to take care of this." And he's just like, "No, it's." Because one thing that they point out earlier in the episode is that the rate at which the eggs mature depends on the biology of the host, and sometimes it might take hours, sometimes it might take weeks or months, and it
Mhm.
just depends on whatever biology is in regards to that host. And so obviously there was something in Hemmer's biology that made those eggs mature very, very quickly, because see, actually him throwing himself off the edge of the cargo bay reminded me of Alien 3. When
Mhm.
Ripley throws herself into that lava pit and the alien queen is bursting out of her chest at the time, and she just grabs it and makes sure that they both die. And So there's this sick part of me wondering as he's falling to his death, are those little Gorn bursting out of him right now? I d
Yeah.
I sure hope not. But, yeah, especially when we saw such a great fun side to him or the last episode, losing him in this one was really a blow, but the minute he got sprayed with that venom, I knew it was
Mhm.
coming. I didn't want it to be that. I had hoped I was wrong, but I felt like, "No, there's a reason why he got sprayed, and it isn't about blinding." And
Yeah.
so I wasn't surprised to find out that that's how the eggs spread. And, and La'an just being there with him and knowing what he has to do, and she understands. She understands his sacrifice, and she honors it by not trying to talk him out of it. And that's
Mhm.
just you know, I don't think anybody really thinks about that aspect of it because she's the only one who's actually in the room with him.
Yeah.
And, but she looks away. She looks away when he throws himself off. That was just one step too much that she couldn't
Mhm.
handle.
The other thing that, I actually forgot to bring up in mine and Bruce's discussion of this episode, one of the questions we had or Bruce had brought up in an earlier episode when we learned about Lon's backstory is, why like, it's unclear in her memories why her brother says, "I have to stay, you go, you run." And I was like, "Oh, maybe he was injured and didn't want to slow her down." And he's like, "No, we saw them both running. Like, he seemed fine." And that episode doesn't answer that. And I watched it again. And I was like, "You're right. That's really weird. Like, why is that?" And we find out, I think, pretty unambiguously in this episode that her brother must have been infected as well and was saying, "You have to run. You have to go." And that's, and so La'an seeing her brother now, she's seeing herself in this little girl, and she's seeing her brother now in Hemmer and having to once again turn away while a loved one sacrifices themselves for and and the other thing that was going through my mind the whole time, everyone's yelling like, "We can put you in stasis, we can do this, we can do that." And I was like, he's never going to agree to that. His whole purpose is to protect the people around him, and he will never let them put themselves in that much danger by keeping him around. And it was just, man, it's so heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. And part of my brain, some little corner of it, kept just because I think I didn't want to fully 100% commit, but some small part of my brain kept thinking, okay, how are they going to get out of this? How are they going to get out of this? How are they going to save him? How are they going to save him? And the rest of my brain's going, no, 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 that's not going to happen. So I was, yeah, everything was warring inside my own head watching that scene. And that's a tough one. And it's so hard to watch a second time knowing what's going to happen the first time, but what's going to happen the second time. And it's so hard to watch.
Yeah, it is. And, that makes 2 people now that Spock has failed to save because he couldn't
Mhm.
save Duke and he couldn't save Hemmer, and he's thinking about that.
Yeah,
He is.
absolutely. And so after the last week's episode, or the previous week's episode that we also talked about tonight, the Elysian Kingdom, I sent a tweet just praising Bruce Horak as Hemmer and saying how much fun he was to watch in that episode, and how amazing his portrayal was, and how he just buried himself in the part, and all of this. And that, I don't know where it ranks exactly, but it's one of my most successful tweets ever. It's almost 1,000 likes, so
Wow.
many comments, so many retweets. People love Bruce Horak as Hemmer. And a very small confession, when I sent that tweet, I had seen this episode and I knew what was going to happen. And to see that outpouring of love for this character was heartbreaking a second time, because I was like, oh, y'all are going to be so sad. And I couldn't say anything. And it was so brutal. And, but at the same time, to see that love for that character, even though I knew what it would mean in a week's time, I don't know what to do with that, but
Yeah.
apologies to everybody on Twitter. I knew that, and I'm sorry.
Well, having screeners is a blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Absolutely.
double-edged sword.
Yeah. Well, we get this. I think the legacy of Hemmer, even though we had such a short time with him, what it means for the character of Uhura and the lessons she takes from him, and that last look as she's, I guess, leaving the Enterprise, when she looks at the communication station, and you're like, she'll be back.
If she's leaving, it looks like she was coming onto the bridge to me.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, because I don't know. Does she still have some graduating to do back at the academy or what? I don't know how that all works. I think Tilly just
yeah, she was just
graduated
on
and
the
was
ship.
back on the Discovery, right? So
Yeah, she never left the ship, man.
yeah,
She was just still on Discovery.
so I don't know. That's interesting, but I love that this is now a part of Uhura's backstory, and I love that. I think that's really cool. Of course, if you follow strict canon, she forgets about all of this in the episode The Changeling when Nomad wipes her brain, but she's fine the next episode because they re-educated her.
Yep.
TOS, man. I love it and hate it. Anyway.
Yep. Well, see, that was the thing, is that back then there was a reset button, and especially in Star Trek, when it came to Star Trek, there was a lot of resetting, a lot of, hey, everything's fine next week, because that was just the way television was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until really Enterprise before we got an overarching theme for an entire season.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, television changed in that amount of time. But, and the thing was back then too, especially when it came to like DS9 and Voyager, they basically wanted things to be not full of continuity and they wanted to have this reset button so that in syndication, people could watch an episode and not have to know what happened in the previous episode. And I think that is the stupidest thing I've ever freaking heard. Do you think humans are that dumb? Now, to be fair, if you look at this country right now, you will see, yes, human beings really are that dumb. But that isn't the point. The point is that there are those who can actually, I don't know, figure out what comes next in the sequence of a television series from 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that hard, folks. And just, but see, that's the thing about executives in the entertainment business. They want to break everything down to the lowest common denominator. They want to appeal to the dumbest person in the room.
Yeah.
And that hurts more than it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. Brutal ending to this episode. And not just with Hemmer, but the Spock thing as well, I think is a huge gut punch. And big. Also, one thing we didn't talk about is La'an setting out on kind of this personal mission, which is an interest. Like, I'm really curious where things are going to go in the next season. Like, it almost feels like there's a big kind of changing of the guard happening. And I'm wondering, like, is that setting a pattern for, like, will each season of Strange New Worlds really change things up? Because, we've got La'an leaving, Uhura potentially leaving, potentially staying. That's still kind of in flux for me. I'm still not sure what's going on there. Hemmer, of course, no longer on the show. Yeah, I don't know. Like, things could look very different next season.
Yeah, and who's going to be the chief engineer? Are we going to get Scotty?
I don't know. Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, I'm really curious. So, yeah. With that said, on that note of ambiguity and large question marks, any final thoughts and ratings for All Those Who Wander?
I have a couple of final thoughts. First of all, Hemmer's cheesy picture at the funeral. Could that have been
Yes,
more perfect?
that was wonderful. That was so good.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And the fact that Ortegas would call him a blue meanie makes me giggle. Also, I loved that this, I mean, I don't love, it's hard to say. I appreciated that this episode was a catharsis for La'an.
Mhm.
Because once they were freezing that final Gorn in that cargo bay, I even turned to Dave and I said, I hope to hell she breaks that into pieces because she needs that. She
Yeah.
needs to feel like she can do something. And how she is in that final scene with Pike is different. La'an is different.
Mhm.
She is not so intense. I mean, she's still intense, but she's also in a way softer. She's more human, I guess, instead of just this warrior always, on guard for something. And and she even calls Pike Chris. Oh, my heart.
Mhm.
She's come such a long way in this season, and I really just appreciated that for her. So I'm still really upset for Spock and just upset that Hemmer's gone. But I will give this one Vulcan dented bulkhead out of one.
Yeah. Yeah, very similar thoughts there. One thing we didn't mention, and a few people brought this up in the comments, was Sam Kirk in this episode.
Okay, yes, thank you. I did forget about that. Okay. So Sam Kirk goes on a very McCoy-like rant at
Mhm.
Spock. And that pissed me the hell off. I'm just like, oh, you're a horrible person. I thought you were conflict averse, but no, you're just a big jerk.
There were a couple moments here that, like, I feel like Pike has a bit of a blind spot for Sam
Mhm,
Kirk, like,
mhm,
because he goes off a couple times, and Pike, like, kind of starts to give him heck for it, but doesn't really. He's like, okay, now that that's done, and it's like,
yeah,
no, 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 what? You need to address this. I
mhm.
was a little disappointed in Pike there for some of that. I was like, interesting. Um,
I understand that. I understand that Pike's job was to keep people on task.
mhm.
And so I think that he made a calculated decision that this was not the time to address that fully. They had bigger problems, and he needed everybody to work together.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was a choice on his part, not because necessarily he has a blind spot, but I'm pretty sure that Sam got a talking to once this was all over.
I was gonna say this is my headcanon that, like, Pike made a note. He's like, I need to talk with Sam after this. And he pulled him aside once they were back on the ship and said,
Yeah, just like,
that's
what the hell?
unacceptable.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Bye,
First
Donnie,
of all,
by the way.
yeah. First of all, he's your boss. Second of all, you didn't see his face. when Duke got killed. So why don't you, Mr. Conflict Averse, just chill?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing about Sam I noticed is, especially on the second watch, is during that scene, there were a couple moments where I really felt like, oh, this is Kirk's brother. Like
Mm-hmm.
he does a couple things with how he I don't know, his inflections or something that I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's not Shatner quite, but there's something about the speech pattern that he did very precisely to sound like Kirk. And I was like, oh, okay, that's very subtle and very well done. And I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciated that. I thought that was really cool. I
Yep.
wish I could think of the exact line where I was like, oh, but it was very well done. So props for that. But yeah, um, it's hard to say that I enjoyed this episode. Like that's
It's
not quite right.
appreciated.
Yeah. Like the stuff with Spock has me, my brain is spinning and I'm reeling with like what are they going to do with this, and oh my goodness. And as much as I hated to see Hammer go, every moment with him in this episode was so beautiful that like
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to lose those moments, which is weird. So I'm so torn about this episode, but I'm just gonna have to give it one great hug between good friends. Yeah, that's
Yes.
yeah. All right. So with that said, we've got one episode left of Strange New Worlds. I know.
It's not enough.
I know. A Quality of Mercy, which is coming out next week. And I will be here. We are definitely doing a live show to talk about that. Don't worry. Yeah, we will be talking about that. We will have much to say, I'm sure. And I think it's going to be a really fun discussion because it's the season finale, right? It's got to be
Yep.
huge.
I will
So,
probably cry at some point because, it's a season
probably.
finale.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for the quote mark around good friends there, DJ. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Brandi, where can people find you if they want to talk to you about Strange New Worlds or anything else that you would want to talk about?
Just Twitter really is the thing that's the easiest to monitor. So I'm at Brandi112. And yeah, there'll be an episode of Boldly Go, my Star Trek Strange New Worlds podcast, coming out relatively soon. It's a doozy because, I had COVID, and so we didn't record on the week that we were doing the Elysian Kingdom because I was sick. And so it's another double episode. And there are some moments where that brain fog is super obvious. So look forward to that. But yeah, Brandi112 on Twitter. But you've got tons of places that you are, Dan.
Yeah, Twitter at Kurtrats is the best place to find me. And yeah, the podcast that I do with Bruce Gibson, Positively Trek, find that at positivelytrek.com or wherever you get your podcasts, and the Positively Trek discussion group on Facebook. We'd love to have you join us there. Great community. We've managed to keep it very positive, and it's a little like island of sanity in the sea of that stuff. So anyway,
Sanity was the exact word I thought of right before you said it. So well done, you. Well done.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're going for. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching this week. We will be back next week for sure. After that, not sure. We don't know when the next thing's coming. So it looks like we're gonna at least get a little bit of a break, which I'm kind of okay with for a little bit.
It's just
I know.
well, it will give me time to be able to go back through all the episodes of Strange New Worlds and do a lot of screen captures of Spock throughout the season. So I've already got quite a few, but that's only from one episode. Yes, it's him dressed as a wizard. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, have you seen the video of them all sort of transforming into their costume?
I was just gonna ask because like
so
that
great.
pose where it's so good.
It's so great. And the funny thing is that not everybody is spinning, of course, because Anson doesn't really spin so much as do a cape flourish.
Mhm.
And then Ethan's like, this is so metal. It was just great. It's so adorable.
It's so good. Yeah.
And Himmer, Bruce as Himmer was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then there's Babs just going, I am not spinning. I'm the king. I don't have to spin. But there's
Exactly.
also, I highly recommend going to Christina Chong's Instagram and also Runa_Ewok's Instagram,
Mhm.
because there are so many great pictures and videos, but my favorite so far is Runa with one of the Gorn babies.
Oh my god.
And the look on her little doggy face in these pictures.
I just remembered something. I need to find out if people have seen this.
Yes. And by the way, Matt, I'd seen that video before you sent it to me. Gosh, I saw that days ago.
Please tell me it's here. Maybe it's not. Oh, where did I see it? Shoot. Oh my goodness.
Anticipation.
I'm not going to be able to find it. Darn it. I don't know where it was. There is a picture. It's so bad of Bruce Horak as Hemmer, and he's got a little like baby Gorn on his shoulder, and it's like "Proud Papa" or something. It's so bad.
Oh no!
I wish I could find it.
Oh,
or figure out where the heck I saw that, but it's so disturbing and
no!
hilarious.
Oh no!
Oh man,
That hurts me.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to find it.
Well, I bet I can. I bet you I can. Or maybe not.
I have no idea where I saw that. Darn it. Was it the Strange New Worlds group? Let me check Facebook.
Possibly.
This is riveting, folks.
Yes, I know. Everybody, get on your device of choice. Find this picture for us. We know you can do it. We know you can.
Oh, well.
So it was him as Himmer, right?
Yes. And I think he was wearing like the away team stuff, I think.
Right. I'll find it after we're done, because that's how this works.
Exactly. Oh, shoot. I didn't make this up, I swear.
I know you didn't.
Oh, is on his Instagram story?
Es posible.
I someone must have screen capped it somewhere.
I'm blotting the sweat off of myself because it's freaking hot here.
Oh.
And I don't have central air. I only have a very noisy in-window air conditioning unit. See, we're giving you quality video tonight, guys.
Oh, totally. Yep, this is
how we roll.
Yeah, I forgot to save it too. I wish I had. Ugh.
You'll find it when you're not under pressure. It'll pop right up.
Yep, absolutely.
That's how it works.
It's hilarious though, and
I'm sure
disturbing. Well, anyway, with all of that said, sorry I don't have that to show you, but anyway, Have a great night, everybody. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you next week. Oh, Patrick says he just messaged it to you. So
Oh, great. You are the best, Patrick. Hang on a second. I can't post pictures in the thing, though. I'll have to send it
how
to
do
you,
I?
Dan. Give me a second. I'll send it to you.
Obviously, it's as funny as I remember.
Oh my god. Okay, I just sent it to you.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh my god. Yep. Okay.
Patrick, I love you, man. You're the best.
Okay, there you go. So good. His face. Oh my god.
It's just so. It's everything I hoped and dreamed.
Oh, it's so ridiculous. I love it.
Oh. Oh. Oh, thank you.
Ah,
Thank you for
beautiful.
that.
Thank
Whew.
you, everyone involved in getting that here. Ah,
Oh.
so great. On that note, I'm going to leave that up as we say goodbye again. Good night, everybody. We'll see you again soon. And it's so good. All right. Bye.